Hey, folks, welcome back if you're tuning in to our Tampa, Florida Living podcast. Today, we've got a fun video, and I have Sarah Maslowski with us from Georgia. I will give her a proper introduction shortly, but let's talk about this video. Last week, we shot a video on our channel that was comparing the quality of life in Tampa to the cost of living here. We kind of wanted to learn if the juice was worth the squeeze in a way, right? So in doing that research, I found that, not only are people moving here in groves, but there's also a lot of people moving out of Florida. And a lot of those reasons are for change of cost of living or, jobs or just, hey, it's getting congested or traffic or whatever that may be. They are finding or calling other places homes. And I started digging really deep and saying, where are all these people moving to? And it happened to be that right next door in Georgia is the #1 spot. So that's going to be the cue for Sarah. She is a top agent here in Northern Georgia, and I'll let her kind of explain that. But I figure there's no one better to help us understand why are they moving to Georgia than Sarah.
Yeah.
So Sarah, hello.
For that tee up, Adam. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I am here in the North Metro Atlanta area and been making YouTube videos on my channel, moving to Georgia for just over 3 years now. And during the height of the pandemic, a lot of clients that we were helping were coming from California. I'm sure you had the same thing. A lot of people from New York, New Jersey. But I started to see an emerging trend that Florida was actually one of the #1 places that we were helping clients from. And that's held steady to this day. And it's surprising to me. And I actually made a video recently about why people are leaving Florida for Georgia. And I had someone comment, people are very passionate about their home states. And I had someone comment that I was lying and that wasn't true. And I was like, there's the data, just as many people that are moving to Florida, people, not as many, but people are also leaving. And I find it a little bit surprising because when you look at the stats nationally, Florida is the #1 state people are relocating to in general. So for me, it's interesting that Georgia is #1 state that we get or that we get people from is Florida. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so for folks, I'm gonna pull it back just for a second. Folks, anybody that is tuning in, if you jump on it at some point, I think we have 9-10 people coming in here. So they're starting to come in the door. If you guys come in and you have any questions for either Sarah or myself, whether that be Florida or Georgia or anything about this topic, please drop it in the comments. And, we'd love to answer that for you as we move along here. And as always, tell us where you're coming from so we have an idea of what that looks like as well. Now, some of the topics we're going to talk about, in case you're tuning in after this video airs live, is, we're going to talk about why people are moving from Florida, moving away from Florida. We're also going to talk about why people are living here, because it's not like everybody's moving out. It's not like, oh God, mass exodus, right? We still have a net positive migration into Florida. So it's not like everybody's just up and leaving. There is reason to live here. But, I was telling Sarah this prior to this video, is that there's a lid for every pot. And, Tampa specifically or Florida could be an amazing place for some people to live. But then I could absolutely understand why somebody wouldn't want to live here, because it's not for everyone. So really just want to go back and forth with Sarah. And then, of course, ask some of y'all's input. And I said y'all, Florida's a little bit southern too, right? Your input, so we can just go back and forth with some of these topics, all right? Let's see. All right, we will get that. Unesky, hello. We'll get to that shortly. I want to start with this. What's probably, if you had #1 thing to say, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, Sarah, #1 thing of what are you hearing from people on your side saying, hey, we're leaving Florida because of this? What would you say that would be?
Surprisingly, I think it's the #1 reason of why people move to Florida, and that's the weather.
Okay.
So a lot of clients that we've helped have lived in Florida for 10 plus years. A lot of the clientele that we're helping happen to be kind of like in that retirement age, early retirement or approaching retirement. And they're just like, we can't handle the heat anymore. And we really want to be someplace with a little bit more of a temperate climate. And then, of course, with that weather piece comes, preparing for hurricanes and all the natural weather patterns and things like that happen in Florida that add or cascade into a bunch of other, ancillary problems that come up with that. So, it's really the weather. And to me, it's a little bit surprising because, a lot of people move to Florida because of the weather.
So probably you're hearing a lot of heat, hurricane, those kind of things.
Yeah. And, so the associated cost of increase in homeowners insurance having to do with hurricanes, flood insurance, property taxes, all of those things kind of combined look, for people to kind of explore something different. And I guess in a way it makes sense. Georgia, it's a really easy, somewhat commute, right? So it's not like you're picking up your life and moving across the country. You're just moving hours north.
Yeah. So that was loaded answer. Okay. And we're going to touch on all those because I love all those things.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Georgia, from southern Georgia to northern Georgia, is the weather very different?
100%. So I grew up in South Georgia, so I feel like I can really, talk with authority on this. And so my husband and I have only lived here in the North Metro Atlanta area for the past 10 years. And so prior, all of our experience was in South Georgia towns. And it is drastically different in the fact that, in South Georgia, it's a lot of what you experience there in Florida, just lots of humidity, really hot.
Yeah.
In some areas of Florida, or at least in South Georgia, there's like no wind. So there's no relief from that heat. And you don't really get any fall or winter season to speak of. It's just a little bit.
What would you say the highest temp would be?
I would say, regularly, upper 90s, in the peak of summer, and low 100s pretty regularly. We were visiting some friends in South Georgia recently, and it was 96, 97. And we were outside, and even though we were in the water, it was like, it's just a different type of heat. So the one thing that was pleasantly surprising to me whenever we moved from South Georgia to North Georgia is the wind. And so it was a novelty to me because we never had wind very much unless it was like a storm or something. So, there's always, it feels like, some sort of breeze that comes through. So even on our hottest days here in North Georgia, you have movement of that air and you have wind, and then obviously, the winters are a lot different as well.
Yeah. The reason I'm mentioning that is because what people don't know about Florida is, Florida is a very long state. And I mean, it's I don't want to say similar to Georgia, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's a very long state, north to south. And so like Miami is closer to the equator. So yeah, it's hot, and then you get into like Orlando doesn't have much of a breeze because it's not on the water. Right. And then as you get like St. Augustine or Jacksonville or maybe some of the Panhandle, then we kind of have a little bit of that. I don't want to say northern because it's not northern, but you have, very cold winters, or you can, right? Like you can't get in the water, right? It's different. I'm going to use Tampa as like the perfect place to live in Florida. Right. And I've made that argument. In fact, I just shot a video on it, why it's the best place to live in Florida. Made a ton of arguments, not only because it's the most well-rounded city, but one of those things is the weather, and people don't realize that. But because we're on the Gulf Coast, on the west side of Florida, we have a breeze, coming off the water. We also never hit 100 degrees. So we've never in the history hit 100 degrees. And that's why I was like, hey, what's the temperature? Because like Orlando will be hotter than Tampa, which is crazy. Yeah. Miami clearly is hotter. But and I know a lot of people can argue, oh, it's the humidity. Well, it is, but we've also never hit 100. So it's kind of nice for that. And I won't shy away from saying, hey, it's hot. But I also look at people like that have moved here from even DC area, the DMV area. And he's like, man, it's hot as hell in DC. Or it's, it can get there. He goes, but for those 3 months of hot and rainy season, he's like, I'll give that up versus the other months that I'm snowed in or that I have to shovel snow and blah, blah, blah. He's like, I can handle it because we also have hot months. At least you guys are like in bathing suits on the beach, So again, it's a little bit of a here nor there. But what I will say is it's really nice because in December, I'm still on the beach. Now, the beauty for me is that anybody from Florida and you acclimate really quickly. I'd say within a couple of years. I'm born and raised here, so I can't attest to that. But all of my friends from up north that have moved down here, they're like, oh man, in a couple of years, I'm having to put on a sweatshirt if it goes under 70. And that's kind of our rule of thumb here. If it's under 70, you're wearing a sweatshirt. That means it's starting to get cold. But in December, we can go on the beach. It's 70 degrees, mid 70s in December. And that's kind of a nice, mild winter all the way through. Whereas I was up in Blue Ridge this past year, and it snowed when we were up in Blue Ridge between Christmas and New Year's. Not a full-blown snow. It was flurry, but it was cold, you know? And I will say, if you ever go to Blue Ridge around that time, you might as well be in Tampa because half of Tampa's there.
Really?
I don't know if you've noticed that. So, yeah, it's like a Tampa getaway.
Yeah. So one of the things that, and I guess it depends on, probably what you touched on in your video, which is your overall lifestyle and the things that you enjoy doing and what you like to do year round. I'm someone that I really love a change in seasons, and that feels good to me. I love fall. I love winter. And then there's some people that are like, no, I want to spend as much time outdoors for as long as possible. I love going to the beach. And if I can do that year round, I'm a happy camper. And so I think, the amazing thing is that people have some really great choices of where to be. And it's all about kind of what fits your lifestyle and what suits you.
Yep. And folks, if you guys have any questions, I know we've had a few other people join on. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments because we will answer them. So just want to throw a few up on the screen real quick.
Yeah.
Yaneski said, no one is buying right now. Too many factors impacting Florida prices. I can't speak for all of Florida because I don't study all of Florida, but I do study Tampa day in and day out. And I can tell you that we are still selling homes. It's still a seller's market technically. In the last 30 days, we have had a lot of new inventory come on the market, but that's actually a healthy thing. I think it's a good thing, meaning homes aren't overbidding price, kind of settle in prices is it's what we need. But when homes only have a 3-month absorption rate, that's not a lot. If interest rates tick down 0.5%, that's going to be eaten up probably because we still have so many people sitting on the sidelines. And and there are some variables there that create those prices, which we will talk about very shortly here. The other thing was they were asking, somebody asked here, is it dry heat? I believe they're talking about Georgia because everybody knows Florida is humid. Is Georgia more of a dry heat or humid or both? What is that?
It is definitely still very humid. So, I think that South Georgia, I would say, is exactly like North Florida in sense of humidity. You get a little bit of relief here in North Georgia because you have a little bit of a breeze, a little bit of a higher elevation. And, helping a lot of clients move from the West Coast here to North Georgia, that's a topic of conversation that I have with a lot of clients on the phone. They're like, well, just how humid does it get there? And it's one of those things. It's like, you just have to come and experience it for yourself. But if you're used to Florida humidity, then you'll think this is nothing. And if you're coming from California, you might think, oh, wow, this is a lot more humid than what I'm used to. And the feedback that I get from clients is, it's different, but it's not unbearable or it's not something that we can't deal with.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to touch on this quickly because you brought it up at the beginning and then I saw it just come up again. It says, I'm looking to move to Florida. Conversation I've been having with my wife for 2 years. However, homeowners insurance has skyrocketed. Yep. So, all right, sorry, I was reading another one. All right. So anyway, with that, home insurance, that's a huge one. And a lot of people associate that with weather, and you're not completely wrong, right? Sarah, we were talking about hurricanes. That's part of the weather conversation. Again, I'm going to use Tampa, and I'm going to knock on wood as I say this, but we have not had a direct hit hurricane in over 100 years. I know this because my family's been here for about 100 years, and nobody's had a flooded home or a home knocked down from a hurricane. In fact, I grew up with tropical storms. Again, this is kind of a way of life. Tropical storms, we go outside, and it's like, how far can you kick the kickball? Because it's windy outside. 70-mile-an-hour winds, nothing. I mean, for us, we're from Florida, right? And so that's kind of like a fun thing. If it's a hurricane, probably category 3 or larger, then it's like, okay, we got to figure this out. What are we going to do? Especially if it's a direct hit. But as we saw last year, there was one that was just south of Sarasota. And I was calling my friends in in Sarasota going, hey, you guys all right? And they're like, yeah, man, we're fine. We had maybe one tree fall down. That's about it. And I was like, really? And it was only like I think it was like a 20 or 30 mile gap from where the hurricane made landfall. So it's just really interesting to understand that, even though it looks like it's the size of the state, it's really where it makes landfall and the strength and all that. But from that conversation, a lot of that insurance hike is not just from a hurricane. A lot of it was from the past few years of all these, lack of better words, roofers knocking on people's doors saying, hey, we can replace your roof, would make an insurance claim. And they sign their rights over to their insurance, to the roofer, that make a claim, and they can, they're basically negotiating on your behalf, and they create a lawsuit. And then what happens is the insurance companies are overwhelmed by lawsuits, so much so that it's cheaper just to fix the roof than to pay attorney fees.
Right.
So once that gets so tied up, eventually they're like, you know what, we're out of Florida, fold this thing up, especially when the hurricane hits. Mm-hmm. So what happened was, over those few years, everybody hightailed it, and now we're left with less competition, makes the prices rise because there's more risk involved. That being said, last year, about eight or nine new companies that I know of, big companies, came back into Florida, and I saw my homeowner's insurance drop about 20 to 25% from last year to this year. So that's light at the end of the tunnel. The other thing I will tell people is, listen, again, you get to make choices when you're buying homes, and it's not always perfect, but new construction versus older homes, which a lot of in the city, or we have older homes. Excuse me. Like my house is 1970s. So even though I have a new roof and windows and everything's remodeled, that's who they're really targeting with the insurance. You can get a brand new home, and I don't know if this is saying it like, oh, it's a lot still, but you can get a brand new home, let's call it 2,600 square feet, and your homeowner's insurance might be $2,000 for the year.
Yeah.
Again,
and the great thing about that is, it's less risk for the insurance company. Everything's newer, built to better code standards, things like that. So, and we see that same advantage here in Georgia when it comes to buying new construction as well.
Yep. So again, there are some different tactics there with insurance. Buying newer obviously will help you. If you go older, that's okay too. It just depends on what your preferences are. So what does that insurance look like over there? I mean, do you guys, I have no idea what to compare to.
So one of the problems that we are starting to face here is the same with roofing issues. So kind of industry wide in specific states, insurance companies are looking at roofs here in Georgia. And if you're purchasing a home with a roof older than 15 years old, they are no longer giving full replacement value coverage for your roof. Rather, they're just giving your estimated useful life left on that roof in terms of if you needed to have that roof replaced due to an insurance claim. So that's one of the things that we are, making sure with clients that we're helping right now, is to make sure that the roofs are in good shape. And if they're not in good shape, working with the seller to either work with their insurance company to have it replaced so that they don't have to inherit that problem, and or working to, get the roof replaced from the seller. So, but we have not seen any, large increases in insurance premiums or anything like that. So that's definitely very good. I'm itching to respond to Uneski's comment about how he doesn't think that now is a good time to buy and that people need to wait.
Get it? Yeah. Let me pop it up there for you. Where's that at? I'm sorry.
You're talking about price cuts, and those who are buying now have not done their homework correctly, in my honest opinion.
Well, go ahead. I'll put it up there if you have a question.
So Uneski, I guess I would say to that, good and bad thing is that, yes, we're seeing price cuts across a lot of areas right now. And one of the things that, you just made the comment of homes being overvalued. We are seeing price cuts, especially here in Georgia, in the fact that we still have sellers who think that, they can put a home on the market that's not in great condition, that needs some, cosmetic work and or maintenance work, and charge the same prices and expect to get the same price that we had kind of like at the height of the pandemic. And so people still overprice homes all day long. And at least in our area, we are not seeing depreciation in home prices. Rather, we're still up 6 to 10%, depending upon the area in Metro Atlanta, year over year, home price appreciation and people paying more. If you look at national trends and look at the amount of homes that are available to buy versus the amount of demand and or what normal amount of homes for sale are, at least in our area in Metro Atlanta, we're 20% down from where a normal market is. And so I recently pulled this data for my area. The last time we had this level of inventory was all the way back in 2012. So meaning that we are so below inventory of what we should be. And that's why home prices for the most part are holding pretty steady. Adam, you mentioned, having interest rates drop, and that is coming very, very quickly. And that's going to have a significant impact on the market. And I just, having these same conversations with clients that reach out to me on my live stream with people that are interacting. And at the end of the day, it has to be a right decision for you, right? And so you're the captain of your own ship. But we were working with some clients yesterday, and they were expressing a lot of the same sentiment that Unesco is talking about, of how, they feel like homes are overvalued, salaries aren't keeping up with things, don't understand how people can afford it. Those are all valid opinions. And at the end of the day, if you don't buy a house now and or, home prices are just going to continue to go up. And that's only going to be driven by interest rates going down, demand going up. And I told them about a client that I helped during the pandemic. They sold their house wanting to go from a 2-story to a ranch style home because that's what they needed for their lifestyle. Couldn't find, the unicorn house that they were looking for. So they decided to rent. And then in that year, whenever they were trying to look for that house after their lease is up, they could no longer afford the house that they wanted because home prices had appreciated so much because of the real estate factors that are happening. And now for sure they can't afford it because their salaries haven't risen to the fact that now that same house that they wanted to buy a few years ago is now $150,000 more. And, we're just not going to see those home prices go down. Thankfully, like Adam said, they're not appreciating at those rapid paces. And that's normal. That's healthy. We need to get back to more of a normal market. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, it's all right. We hear it a lot as realtors. So it's good to, hear it. Hey, it's Georgia. It's happening too. We have the same answers technically. I always say that I don't have that perfect crystal ball, and I do have people, and it's funny, sometimes I shock people and I'm like, you know what? You probably shouldn't be buying a house, right? Because it's not always perfect for everybody. And as a realtor, our job is to be an advisor to you. And, listen, if you're going to buy the house anyway, then I'm going to help you buy it. But, there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense for you at the moment. And that's okay. Like, if somebody tells me, hey, Adam, can I buy a house and in 2 or 3 years I'm going to make money? I don't know. Maybe right. You shouldn't be buying a house because nobody has a perfect crystal ball. If not, I'd already be rich and not working. So the best thing is like, hey, if this makes sense for your lifestyle, your family, you can afford it because you looked at your finances and, you maybe have a longer outlook of 10 years, or if it is potential for 3 years, maybe you have a plan B where it's in the wheel well where you can keep it as a rental or something, then yeah, that makes sense. But it's not perfect for everybody. So again, going to anybody that ever says, oh, it's overpriced or it's this or it's that, it's not always. It's that everybody wants everything perfect. and they want it cheap too. And let's just be honest, prices across the entire country have gone up, and that's what's bothering people. I mean, look at cars, look at everything across the board. The problem with real estate right now is prices went up and interest rates went up and taxes and insurance, because they're all related. So we're just in a weird spot. I think, you know, people should be cautious and look at their own personal finances, but it doesn't mean don't buy a house. It just means buy a house if it's right for you. This one right here, way of flow. I do want to purchase it in Tampa. I've been watching Adam videos for quite some time. Channel super informative and cover Tampa well. Hey, thank you so much. And you know, obviously reach out to us when you do want to start that planning. Even if it's a year out, we're good to help you out. And again, I'm going to give you the same advice as I just mentioned. If it makes sense for you, then that's when we really want to dive into it. And then we got to look at your lifestyle and try to help you best there. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So, sorry, got to answer this one quickly. What up, Jonathan? Will he be building townhouses facing Morejon Lagoon? I believe so, but you know, they're still developing there. So that'll be, you know, stay on the lookout. What I will tell you is that in Morejon, and I'm actually going to feature them next week. I'm actually getting into before the grand opening. So secret's out right now, but Casa Fresca is releasing their Bold product, which is like a nice, really nice product, entry level to mid-tier home. And it's kind of their debut there. And they're going to have a completely different look than they've ever had on the market. Not sure if that's in your wheel well, but super awesome product to look out for. And I'm going to show everybody before even the grand opening, which is later in the month. So
what are the prices on new construction entry-level house there in the Tampa area?
Yeah, so good question. So in Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater are the three cities in our metro. So I'm giving you overall prices because we work three different counties, cities. Median sales price for single family home is $423,000.
Okay.
That being said, I can get you into a brand new, you know, new construction, and I'm talking 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We really don't have like 2-bedroom homes, new construction.
Right.
Single family home for probably, and I'm talking popular suburbs or areas right now, $375,000.
Okay.
And that's going to be, you know, 1,500 to 1,600 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Once you hit 400,000, you have about 3 models, and I'm just off the top of my head, about 3 or 4 models. But it's crazy. Once you go from 4 to 420, there's like a whole nother, you know, 3 or 4 models. So it's like when you hit that average sales price or median sales price of 423, you're going to have about 9, 10 different houses to choose from, just from one specific builder. So there's inventory there. The hardest part becomes, you know, taxes, which I'd love to hear the difference on that, because I know a lot of people say taxes here. No, if you call an appraiser's office, you'll never get a straight answer on what a tax assessment will be, right? Because it's this crazy calculation of millage rate, and then you have to get all that, the assessed value. I always like to tell people right now we're looking at about 1.5% times the purchase price. Quick round number. What is that for you guys? And by the way, where do you focus? I know it's not like Atlanta, right? Because we're probably comparable to Atlanta.
So we are, the metro areas that I serve are north of Atlanta, like an hour or so, the suburbs where we see lots of families, tech jobs, things like that. So Gainesville, Beaufort, Suwanee, Alpharetta, Cumming. So those are all essentially like an hour north of Atlanta. A good rule of thumb for our area is 1% of the purchase price is typically what you can expect to pay in property taxes. One of the unique benefit that I'm learning is a little bit unique from Florida to Georgia is that a lot of these counties offer substantial discounts for seniors whenever you reach a certain age, where our property tax bill, the majority of it is made up of the school portion of the property tax that goes to paying for schools. So, and that accounts for about 60% of the property tax bill. So a lot of these counties, when you reach a certain age, they get rid of that completely. So it cuts your property tax bill, you know, essentially in half. So that's a huge benefit for retirees.
Yeah. One thing I think is really cool here, I don't know if you guys have that, but is we have a homestead exemption cap. So not only do you get up to $50,000 off of your assessed value before it's assessed, right? When it's homestead, when it's your primary residence, but it's a 3% cap. So if the prices go up, right? Like let's say you bought your house in 2019, then you're in the money, because before prices went up, it can only go up as the values go up 3%, the assessed value per year. And that's
Okay.
capped forever
Yeah.
until you sell that home, and then you can actually port that over to the next house and you keep a portion of that. But it's kind of neat because sometimes, and you have to be careful as a home buyer, because you're looking like, oh, their taxes are $3,000. It's like, but wait a minute, they've owned that house for 10 years.
Yeah.
But that is the beauty of living in your house, that it's not going to just skyrocket on you. Once you own it, it's your primary, they protect you. So I think that's pretty cool. Quick answer, because I just saw one or two real quick. Sorry. Suits and Cents, will you be available next week to show some of the $400 plus homes? Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be available. I don't know if you mean come in town to show them, but yes, reach out to my team with an email if you do, and we can get you hooked up. But if you mean on video, yes, I'll be available next week to show those too.
I like Red Wolf's comment. Yeah. So
yeah, these will just think everyone's rich. I saw on there, 400,000 is not an affordable home. And then I saw another comment saying 420 can't even buy a townhome in Fairfax. I think that's kind of the perfect answer here. And sorry, Sarah, real quick, if you don't mind, I take this for a moment. Again, I go back to, you have to realize that I'm talking about Tampa. Tampa's the 16th, 17th largest metro in the country. Even though we're not, Chicago, I guess, we're still a very big, metro, and we're a thriving city with Fortune 500 companies, and you name it, it's all pretty much here. Even though we have a local, old town, small town feel, which is really part of the charm, it is still a thriving metro. So it is a place to be, and professionals want to be here. So, it's not the same. You can't compare it to Mobile, Alabama. Prices are different everywhere. And it's just assumed that, yeah, that's what the average price here. I don't assume everybody's rich or not. That's just goes hand in hand with the cost of living here. And a lot of times the quality of life, demand is always going to set that tone for price. And if people are willing to pay for a product, that's going to set the market value for that product. So anyway, that being said, Sarah, I'm sorry, I jumped in. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, the fact is that it stinks that the home prices are where they are across the country. And yet, it's, if we could carve out, more affordable housing, and if there's a lot of clients that I would love to help find more affordable homes, but they're just simply not there. And the real estate agents, we don't have any say so in what that is. Just like Adam said, it's the market. And so unfortunately or fortunately, it just forces people to look at other areas that are more affordable. And it also, on the other hand, speaks to the fact of what a great investment real estate is. So, sellers definitely are not complaining about the prices that they're able to get for their homes and the money that they're making. And it's just one of those risk reward pro con type situations that, we're never going to make everybody happy, but unfortunately it's not something we control.
I will tell you where I think there's a lot of value in Tampa. And you have to be patient, right? If you're looking at it strictly from, I want a good buy, I want equity, I want to make money, right? Which I don't think is a bad thing. I actually treat all of my homes like investments. But the one thing I'll tell you where I think Tampa, there's a lot of value, is that Tampa was built out from its core. And we're very residential, so a lot of single family homes. And then it just expanded outward. So all of our new constructions, 35 to 40 minutes on the suburbs or in the outskirts of town, right? So that means that the city is just full of older homes being early 1900s, mid-century. And those homes, a lot of them need renovation, or what people are doing is tearing down and building up. But a lot of them is renovation. And, rule of thumb with real estate, if you put sweat equity in, you can get that money back. And so I do find that there's a lot of value if you have patience and you put a little sweat equity. Not everybody wants to do that anymore. Everybody wants that perfect turnkey home. But every single home that I've owned, I have put that sweat equity. Not necessarily myself. I had a contractor, but we did that ourselves. And we have, you know, regardless of the market going up, we walked into every single home with equity because we waited and we were patient. We studied that section. Then when it was a good time, you know, we bought the home and renovated it. So just thinking there's a lot of upside potential, regardless of now or the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot of potential there in Tampa for that specifically. Let's go switch gears for a second. I'm gonna show a something I'm interested in just because of, you know, cost of living. We just talked about that. See if I can make this a little bigger here. Nope, let's go back to that one. All right. So right here, this shows the cost of living index with Tampa, showing that we're actually a little bit under the national average. And when you compare it to other markets, you know, sizable markets, it's funny, Atlanta is right here. We're kind of neck and neck. So when I know that you're not talking specifically Atlanta, you're actually more affordable than Atlanta, right? Some of your areas. But yeah, I mean, you could see that we're lower than Orlando. Obviously, Miami and Raleigh, Austin, Nashville. Jacksonville has us by a little bit, but come on, guys, it's Jacksonville. That being said, the one I really wanted to show was next. This was from that video I just shot last week. It was, this is from Numbeo, but it shows quality of life. And I was actually a little bit surprised, but it showed Tampa as the #1 city in the country for quality of life. And it ranks safety, purchasing power, healthcare, cost of living, property price to income ratio, traffic, pollution, and climate. I know a lot of those are controversial topics, but when you start to look at all of them from a different lens, you know, we're ranked #1 for quality of life. Now, putting that aside for a moment, because I know that that can go every which way and the comments will probably blow up. I do find that quality of life is subjective to everybody because it depends on like what you're looking for, right? Somebody that loves Tampa won't love, you know, some of those smaller towns that you're working with, right? And vice versa. So what do you think the quality of life is there? What makes it so special for people moving to Georgia? And I have to imagine that if they're leaving Tampa or leaving Florida, a lot of the things that we're hearing is that like, oh, we can't afford a $400,000 house. That's okay, I get it. We want more space or the taxes or the insurance. So what are some of those things that attract people that way to you that are not those things?
I think it's, you know, having the 4 seasons, having access to a major airport, you know, Atlanta Hartsfield International, you know, massive, huge airport. So you can get anywhere you want to go. Having access to all the great sporting events and concerts and things that happen in Atlanta, but without having to live, you know, in that, great schools in the suburbs, great communities. One of the surprising things that I hear from just about every single client I help is how nice people are here. And that's something that I've always lived in Georgia. So for me, it's not something that I notice at all because it's just my way of life.
Yeah.
But I kid you not, like every single client that we help relocate here at some point and part of the process, they mention just how nice everyone is. And it's kind of sad that that stands out. So, and then I think for a lot of people too, coming from other states, you know, values and the way of life here is a little bit different, and for better or worse, you know, for some people that they really appreciate that.
Yeah. I think, what's funny is I always say people are welcoming here and they're happy here. And listen, it's different when you go to a bigger city though. And I'm saying that as Tampa, like it's different because like people say, oh, crime, I could find crime if I want to find crime. But ultimately, I think Tampa's amazing as far as like that and people and culture and diversity, like all of that is just a melting pot of people. But, you know, I had a guy move here from Chicago, and when he moved here, the first thing he said was, hey, I've got a 16-year-old that I need to get out. This was during COVID, but he's like, I want to get him out and about. I don't want him snowed in. I want him going to dances and playing sports and doing the things that he's supposed to do all year round. So That's number one of why he moved there. But then his really was his 3 or 4-year-old. And he's like, you know, when I come there, my biggest question is, are people friendly? And, you know, I want everybody to feel like welcomed and mixed in, because I didn't necessarily get that where he lived. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I'll talk to you about it when I get there. I was like, okay. And so I was like, meet me down at the Riverwalk. And we met for a cup of coffee. And when he walked up, he's like, remember that question I asked you about, like, you know, is it a good mix? Is everybody good diversity and all that? And I said, yeah. And he goes, don't worry about it. And I said, why is that? He's like, as I walked up, number one, somebody opened the door for me and was like, there you go. Number two, I heard 3 different languages, you know, people talking on cell phones or whatever as I'm walking up to you. So it's like, there's no question that they don't know me, but it's kind of like a thing where they're just like, hey, how you doing? Go ahead. You know, I'll hold the door for you. And, you know, I'd never really realized that until I was actually in my late 20s. And I had a friend that moved down here from Jersey. And I held the door for somebody and I waved to him. And I was like, oh, go ahead. And they're like, thank you. And I was like, yeah, no worries. And he's like, why are you talking to that person? You don't know them. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, man, that's just weird. You're waving to everybody and, you know, like all these guys. And I'm like, that's just kind of what we do. And then a couple of years later, he's like, man, I softened up because I went back to Jersey to hang out with my buddies. And they were all like, man, why are you waving to everybody?
Yeah.
I think that you have Georgia, which is that Southern hospitality. Florida's not that. I think there's something special about Southern hospitality. I really like it. Florida is different. I always say that Florida is like the salt and the weather and the humidity, not the humidity, the heat, the summer and everything. It just beats you up and it softens you up. And it's that Florida laid back lifestyle. And I feel like anybody that finally comes down here, you know, the sun and the weather and the water, it just softens you up and it slows things down a bit. So in a weird way, we have a similarity with that Southern vibe. I mean, yes, you have Southern culture is different than Florida vibe, but it's very similar as far as like slowing down, welcoming, saying hello and things like that. I think it's a neat quality to have, especially when we're talking about quality of life.
Yeah.
People come down here for that. So one thing I will say, though, is that a lot of people move here for the things to do, though. So when people think of Florida, do you ever think of like retirees or do you think of like Sleepy Town?
I mean, yeah, I guess I think of retirees and I think of the beach, and then I also think of Disney. So.
Yep. So that's funny. Like Orlando is like tourism. And then you go to like Miami and it's like the Vegas of Florida, right?
Yeah.
And then you have like Naples and Sarasota and you have, you know, really nice areas, but it's like destination living. You're paying to live a specific lifestyle. And that's kind of why I went back to Tampa being one of the best places to live in Florida, is that it's so well-rounded because we have everything from, you know, country living to beachfront living to metro, you know, city living, to all of the different lifestyles to choose from. But the things to do here is literally endless. And it's not a sleepy town. Like you go to Fort Myers and some of those places and the average age is well up into the 50s and 60s. Down here in Florida, I think the average age is 36. So definitely a good hot spot for young professionals, starting a business, you know, families, kids, you know, because of schooling and whatnot. But then also it is a safe haven for retirees too, because they love it because it's active retirement lifestyle. So
right.
I don't know, what's your blend over there? Like, what are you seeing? Like, again, I know people like move there for a reason. What's the attractant there?
I think the North Metro Atlanta area becomes so popular because it's just to that point where you can get away from the heat and weather events, where you get a taste of the 4 seasons, but you don't have to deal with snow. You're still close to a metro area with lots of things to do. You're in a very great location for lots of opportunities for day trips and weekend trips to a lot of other different towns, Nashville, Charleston, Savannah. You've got the Blue Ridge Mountains that are, you know, just, you know, an hour and a half away, depending upon where you're at in the metro area. Great schools for a lot of people. You know, it's very affordable compared to where they're moving from. And so I think all those trade-offs when they're just looking for a better quality of life to raise a family and or to retire, it's a great alternative solution to to the Florida area. And that's,
Do you guys,
from, the input that we've gotten from clients that have chosen to be here.
yeah, I know on your channel that you highlight a lot of like lake living, right? Lake living, was it lake life? And and I've traveled through Georgia a bunch. So I can tell you that I personally love the pace that I was going. I don't know a lot of the smaller, I don't know Alpharetta. I don't know a lot of those areas. I know weird places like Dahlonega.
Right. Yeah.
And like places that are like, what? And it just, you just go through them. But what is like, if you could tell me about the lake over there, like what's that? What's the attraction there?
So Lake Lanier is a big lake an hour north of Atlanta. And it's kind of like right in the middle of the suburbs that I help quite a bit.
Okay.
It's nice in the fact that, if you want to get a taste of water and water sports, you have a large body of water that's very drivable. A lot of people choose to live on the lake or retire on the lake, and, for all the same reasons of boating and fishing and all those great things. So that's a huge area, but for a lot of, also a big factor for a lot of other people there's a lot of job opportunities in the metro Atlanta area. Alpharetta is kind of considered the tech hub of the South. And there's a lot of technology companies that have, secondary headquarters there in the area, beautiful neighborhoods and lots of great diversity in restaurants and people. And you still get great school systems, it's attractive to a lot of people, but there's also a lot of options that are outside of that too.
Do you, when you say suburbs, do you have a lot of new construction? And then the other question is, do you have more areas with land, or are they like more community settings?
Yes, and it's expensive. So there are a lot of new construction opportunities in the metro towns, and but you do have to continue to go further and further away from Atlanta proper to find those. So over the past couple of years, Cumming is a town that's just north of Alpharetta. That's had an explosion in new construction developments and communities there because they've had the existing farmland to buy up to turn into, these great neighborhoods. And because the demand for suburbs a little bit south they've built out the community. There is no more land to build in Alpharetta. So those people that want new construction options are driving 20 minutes north into Cumming, but that's also, driven up prices in that area as well. So in the metro area, though, you do have, towns like where I live, Gainesville. You can find, really great communities there with a more affordable price point. Gainesville was just named as one of the Southern Living's, best cities on the rise for 2024. And so, you have a lot of communities and pockets where you can find what you're looking for. You just have to be willing and open to, consider some other areas.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because as Tampa expands, again, just using it as a major metro, I know Florida has pockets of country living as well. And so do we outside of Tampa. But, the cost of land as things expand past Tampa, it just starts to go up, it starts to get more expensive than it used to. And I feel that certain clients that I'm helping, it's like, hey, I've got X amount. I want to move there. I want to get land. I want 5 acres or I want 2 acres and I want to build a house. And it's like building costs here. If you want to buy a piece of land and then go build, a contractor right now will charge you probably close to $300 a square foot to build. And so that doesn't make sense. And that's not even housing. That's just cost of materials and a contractor. The land on its own, you can find affordable land. It's just the building doesn't make sense when you start to look at that. But so a lot of people I have seen, I would say, is moving to like Georgia or other places of Florida for the cost of living and specifically cost of buying land. I think that would be like the number one big one. It's interesting you said the tech thing, because Tampa actually has a third of all tech in Florida, or like a quarter, 25 to 30%. And it was like one of the top tech hubs in the country. I wonder if people are kind of moving back and forth for that reason.
Yeah.
But interesting. Go ahead.
I was just gonna tell you that I need to exit
Yep.
the conversation here in just a
Got
few
it.
minutes to make an appointment.
No worries. So thank you,
Yeah.
Sarah, for joining us. Folks, I appreciate you adding in the comments. And, it was interesting, brought up a bunch of good points here. I think it's kind of easy to see, and we had a little bit better of an insight hearing from Sarah on her end, what's going on in Georgia. But, cost of living, quality of life, those are two of the biggest discussions. There's a lot of variables that go into that, but it helps us understand why people are choosing different states. Some people, Florida living is where it's at, and other people, maybe Georgia has a few things that we can't offer. But either way, if you're looking to move to Tampa specifically, or Northern Georgia, or really Atlanta, give us a call, because I can help you. I can connect you with Sarah, and we can help you either way. And until that next video, I'll catch you later. See ya.
Thank you.